You've got a tool, and for the most part, you know how to use it. Some of us get to use them more often than others, some every day even. And I bet if you think back, you can remember the first time you used your tool. You were nervous, but excited, and were probably surprised at just how quick the job got done. I think we all have our own personal way we use our tools. Rough, gentle, rhythmic. Sometimes you're just trying to get the job done. Other times it's a whole experience, and you're trying to make it last for a while. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to use your tool, but it doesn't hurt to learn some new techniques to make your game a little stronger. This is not going to be an instructional how-to on using power tools. If you have these machines, I assume that you know how to use them properly for the most part, or have at least seen videos teaching you how to do it. However, there are some nuances, let's say, that can help you produce better cuts and while maintaining a high degree of safety. You are in charge of your own safety. These tips should always be paired with proper power tool etiquette. Find your desired orientation of all pieces and set them up like ducks in a row on the right side of your fence. Don't use your regular table saw sled for angled cuts, or you'll be left with a flimsy piece up the middle. With big panels, don't look at the blade cutting the wood, watch the wood against the edge of the fence. Underpowered saw? Use multiple passes, raising the blade height. On that note, buy a saw with more than 1.75 horsepower. You won't regret it. Keep the workpiece flat and toward the fence all the way until you clear the riving knife. You can hear it if you're lazy, and will trim the end too much, not to mention kickback potential. If you're going to use a regular blade for dados rather than a flat bottom blade, don't set your dado height to the tip of one of these teeth. Instead, set it to the tip of one of these teeth and then lower it about a 30-second. This is because the teeth alternate in which direction you're pointing, and you'll end up with several V's in your dado. This is fine if you plan to clean it up with a chisel later. Otherwise, drop it the 32nd of an inch, and your inset piece will ride right along the tip of those V's. If you need a really small piece, remember the smaller they are, the higher the chance that they'll fly away. Make that cut at the bandsaw instead. Your focus should be flat and against the fence here on the left side, if this is your good side and this is your waste side. Don't really care what's happening way down there on the other end of the board. Score the piece while pulling out and rip all the way through while pushing back in. Come to a complete stop before lifting the blade. Pull the trigger with the saw well away from the piece. Sometimes the kick on can make it jump downward. Though it's a chop saw, don't chop. Gently lower the blade through the piece. I always choose to miter the saw versus bevel the saw. That cut is the same if you rotate your piece 90 degrees. Also, you have to remember to slide your fence out if you make a bevel cut. Figure out which of your two opposing faces would be harder to get flat. That would be this one on this side, and definitely this one on this side. The two sides without the X are what you want to run through your jointer. The first face you run should be the broader one, so that when you rotate 90 degrees, a larger section is in contact with the fence, therefore giving you a better shot of coming out perfectly perpendicular. Snipe occurs when the end of the piece loses contact with the infeed side of the table and dips down. To lessen the chance of that, I focus on putting more force downward onto the outfeed side to prevent that little dip from happening. But sometimes it's just inevitable. Slide your piece in while you crank the wheel until you just start to contact the roller, then back it off a little bit. You may miss with your first pass, but you can sneak up on it from there, rather than accidentally take a 1/8 inch chunk out of this thing. Most of us are hobbyists. We're not on a time clock. Make more, smaller passes. I tend to lower 1/2 a turn at a time. You often need to make the same operation on pieces that all look the same. Devise a pile system first. I often set up a temporary table when working with a lot of pieces. One pile needs to be planed at that height, the other has already been planed at that height. Take it a step further and go north, south, east, west. Daisy chain multiple pieces together through the planer to lessen the chance for snipe. But this doesn't always work, so I leave pieces long and just cut off snipe at the end. Lower the guard as far down as possible. This keeps the guide bearings closer to the piece, which keeps the blade straighter as it goes through the piece. Bandsaw cuts are never the final product. There's always flush trim routing, disc sanding, planing, something after. So don't worry about leaving yourself space beyond the line. Just get close to where you feel comfortable and don't worry about little extra blips here and there. If you're making a cut on a perpendicular face, go ahead and plow through it. But if you need to do something a bit more shallow, it's best to start off slow here until the blade gets some purchase, and then you can go ahead and knock it out. Bandsaws have zero outfeed essentially. So when cutting long pieces, have a catcher or just be ready to do a sketchy reach around and pull move. When you first chuck up a new bit, turn it on and watch for wobble. Sometimes in a rush you can get the hexagon set on a corner and not in the face in the chuck, which sets the bit off center. Bigger hole, slower speed. Harder material, slower speed. In grain versus face grain, slower speed. For your first hole at least, touch the bit to the starting point without the saw on. Just easier to line it up that way. Either blow out or pull up to remove chips from big deep holes. This prevents burning and bogging down the blade. Don't grab this handle, grab this handle. If you do this one, you may have to do a rotation twist in your hand to get all the way through, versus this one is the same all the way through. There you go. Maybe you knew all that stuff, maybe there's one thing that helped you out. So if it did help you out, then help me out. And you know what that means, those buttons down there. Thanks for watching.